Hey everybody, welcome into it, the Volquest Podcast here on this Tuesday morning. I'm Eric Kane with Brent Hubbs, Rob Lewis, and Matt Ray joining us here today. A big thanks as always to our proud sponsor of the Volquest Podcast, that is Exterior Home Solutions, making this possible. For a free estimate, go ahead and give them a call today. It's at 865-524-5888. 865-524-5888. Exterior Home Solutions. Bringing you coverage of the Volquest Podcast. Appreciate you guys for watching on YouTube. As always, please like and subscribe to the channel and help get this video out to more and more Tennessee fans. Going to talk a little football, going to talk some basketball and a little recruiting here on the podcast today. But want to go ahead and start off and talk on what's topical right now. Of course, as Tennessee's gearing up for a big-time matchup late tonight, a 9 o'clock Eastern time tip for senior night against Arkansas. Rob Lewis, Tennessee picked up a big-time win it was not a good opponent. South Carolina is what it is, but it was a big win for a number of different reasons on Saturday, and seeing what can come of this is now Arkansas, a pretty fiery opponent coming to town here tonight.
Yeah, I thought Tennessee looked really good on Saturday. Again, you can't, not talk about the level of competition. South Carolina has been, one of the 2 or 3 worst teams in the league this year, although they did give Alabama all they wanted last week. But just, Tennessee was clicking. They scored 80-plus points. Josiah came back. He was the story today. He was healthy. He played 21 minutes, scored 18 points, looked really smooth. Didn't look to be bothered by the ankle. I was frankly surprised that Julian Phillips didn't play. I mean, both he and Josiah practiced on Friday, and I thought Julian looked fine. But obviously they're being cautious with postseason coming up. And the Tyreek Key thing kind of came out of nowhere on Saturday morning with his ankle. So, Tennessee still has not been at full strength for almost all of February, but getting healthier. I think all signs point to Phillips playing. And you mentioned, Eric, huge week. I mean, Tennessee goes in to the final week of the regular season just clinging to that 4th seed in the league race, which, obviously, comes with a double bye. Missouri is 1 game back, has a tiebreaker on Tennessee thanks to the miracle finish, and Missouri has an easy close. Should be an easy close at LSU and close it out at home against Ole Miss.
Yeah, it's I looked at that schedule earlier today, and that is a really easy schedule for Missouri. Brent, when you look at the Tennessee basketball team, is it? I feel like obviously you want to in your. I mean, maybe I'm wrong here, and I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer, but I mean, South Carolina's bad. I mean, it's a bad basketball team. It's just a matter of trying to get, Josiah to get back and play another game, and get Julian back in there, and get Tyreek back in there to try to get these guys to play a game or 2 together before conference tournament starts next week.
Well, I just think you got to get healthy. I don't know that they necessarily have to play together for chemistry or anything like that, because they've been so beat up. They played so many different combinations. Guys should be plenty comfortable playing with everybody. What you want to get, from, in my opinion, and Rob, I'll ask you this. I think you want them out there to figure out kind of where you are in rotation because of those injuries. Where's Meshak's minutes? How do you balance that? How many minutes do you play Josiah? Do you play a little different combination of guys than maybe you would have played pre-injury? Can you get back to your defensive rhythm because you can switch 1 through 5? But I think the bigger thing for me, Rob, is just how do you manage? How many minutes do you give Josiah? Where's kind of the threshold for him of when it becomes detrimental minute-wise? How many minutes do you want to give Meshak? Where is he offensively? Obviously, against South Carolina, he was good, but it is South Carolina. I think those are a couple of questions you can answer. But in terms of playing with each other, these guys, hell, they played with everybody because they've had everybody beat up throughout the year.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think continuity is as big of a concern as what you're talking about. Where they at conditioning wise? I mean, I think they're probably in not bad shape there, but Meshak really gives Coach Barnes some flexibility here. I mean, he doesn't have to rush those guys back and have them play 30 minutes, and that's the Jamon Meshak factor has been the silver lining of the injuries they dealt with in February, because I think he's proven definitively to the coaching staff that he can be out there in big moments, that they can count on him. Offense with him, it's probably going to be gravy most nights, but he has the last couple of weeks, man, he looks so much more confident there. He scored double figures at Kentucky with 16. He had 14 against South Carolina. I mean, he's not obviously never going to be, a high volume shooter, but he's not a liability on that end of the floor anymore. And man, based off what we've seen from him, and I'm not trying to be hypercritical of Tyreek Key, but the kid really is struggling with his shot. He's 2 of 21, from the floor in the last 3 games. And man, I'd have a hard time justifying giving him any minutes over Jermon Meshack right now.
Yeah, I would agree. Of course, he's just got to get back out there, first and foremost, missing Saturday's game. Rob, I know you got a preview out there right now or coming, at some point today. What's Arkansas look like? How different is Arkansas now the last 3 games than they had been the rest of the conference slate? I mean, this is a team that's playing with a lot of momentum right now.
Yeah, I mean, Nick Smith, one of the most talented freshmen in the country, a top 3, top 5 recruit, from everybody. He's been dealing with knee injuries all year long, got him back. He's still very much figuring things out. He's not all the way. He's played in 10 games on the year, and several of those were back in November before he shut it down to try and get the knee right. But he's super talented. But if they can figure out a way to work him in, that's really gonna be a bust. It's a tough gig for him, though. He's only been back for a couple weeks this late in the year. But man, Arkansas is really talented. I mean, they're dangerous. They're only 8-8 in the league, but they won at Rupp. They had Alabama on the ropes on Saturday down in Tuscaloosa. Really athletic. Do not play very well away from home. They're only 2-7 on the year, but just mentioned one of those was in Rupp. And we'll want to play fast if they can. Not a great 3-point shooting team like we've seen from them in the past, barely over 30%. So they want to get buckets in transition if they can. And I kind of like the matchup for Tennessee because, at least in part, that they're not a great 3-point shooting team. They're not going to be able to spread Tennessee out, and it's not like Tennessee can't handle that. But I think when you don't really have that threat, they can really wear on you defensively. But it's anything can happen because Arkansas is talent has not been their problem. Consistency has been.
Yeah, Rob, when I watch them play at times, they seem to be at their best when they just put their head down and go to the rim and really attack the rim. Can Tennessee handle the straight line drive? And how much better is Tennessee defensively with Josiah because they can now switch everything again? Whereas if you're playing the 2 big men, maybe it's harder to switch 1 through 5. Does that help Tennessee in this matchup with Arkansas straight line drives?
Well, I think it helps a lot, personally. Now, I don't know that you'll be able to do that for 40 minutes. There might still be, depending on where Phillips is, there might still be a time when you've got, some Awaka, Adu rotations. But I'm with you. I mean, I know Rick's had to do more of that than he wanted to by necessity, but I have not been a very big fan of the 2 bigs on the floor at the same time. Look.
Rob, of course, you got Arkansas tonight. You go to Auburn on Saturday, but along with the game tonight, which is a game that Tennessee needs to find a way to win, it's also senior night. You've got, correct me if I'm wrong, 5 guys you're going to be honoring if you're Tennessee. What can you say about this class and some guys like Olivier and Santiago who have been here for 4 years now? And Josiah.
It's been a really great group. I mean, to watch it grow and cover. Josiah has had a really nice career. I'm not sure that he's fully appreciated, for how good he's been for so long. Olivier, I can remember, talking to Coach Barnes after he had gone to see him play in high school for the first time. Some friend of a friend of a friend from his time back at George Mason, knew Olivier's high school coach, and this kid from Finland that had a knee injury and nobody knew about him. So Olivier becomes a really good story. I mean, I don't know that anybody would have thought he would have been a multi-year starter when he came in here as a freshman. Santiago, just another example of the staff going out and finding a kid somewhere that fits them. From Uruguay via the NBA Academy in Australia, and Josiah, just a 5-star kid that Tennessee beat out Duke for, beat out Kansas for, beat out Michigan State, and Josiah has honestly been one of my favorite kids to cover, right up there with Chris Lofton and Grant Williams as far as just, personality, the way they play, unselfish. And, Urosh is not everybody's cup of tea, but man, I'll tell you, teammates love him. I mean, there's not a guy on the team that is more liked, just because, you can see by the way he plays how much it means to him, how much being a teammate means to him. So, yeah, it's been a unique group of guys. I mean, you think about it: Finland, Uruguay, Serbia, and Charleston, South Carolina. That's pretty good range right there.
That's a true melting pot for sure. Melting pot of personality. Says a lot about the culture and the program that those guys, have adapted and become, the guys that they have and the leaders that they've been in this program. They got work to do. This is a big week of basketball in the SEC, not just for Tennessee, but you got a lot of teams playing for a lot of things this week. And this is what the SEC wanted. I mean, they didn't want they didn't want it to be on cruise control for your top couple of seeds. We didn't have to worry about anything. I mean, I know Alabama, basketball-wise, has things under control on the court, but there's a lot of other teams in this league playing for a lot of stuff this week. A lot of it, big time week.
Oh yeah, and I'm gonna have to probably go find it. I bet Bruce Pearl is whining today when you look at that close, because they're also one game back at fourth place in the league, but they close at Alabama and home to Tennessee. I bet.
And they had Kentucky on Saturday, right? I mean, that was
exactly.
I mean, at Rupp, at Alabama, and Tennessee,
and then home to Tennessee. That's brutal. And like I mentioned, Missouri just got a gift handed to them with LSU and Ole Miss in the final week. Vandy has a puncher's chance. They're sitting at 9-7. They go to Kentucky and then host Mississippi State in their finale. I don't know that I see the Doors winning in Rupp, but if they did go 2-0 this week, they got a chance to get in there and muddy things up for the fourth place game.
It's a big week all around, especially for Tennessee. Tip-off 9 o'clock Eastern time tonight for senior night against Arkansas, and then on the road at Auburn come Saturday. You shift away from the hardwood and into recruiting a little bit. Matt, Ray, it's a big weekend for Tennessee recruiting. The dead period's going to be lifted. Tennessee's going to start having guys back on campus, and that's going to be frequent throughout the month of March and on into spring practice.
Yeah, March is such a pivotal month on the recruiting trail. Spring practice, so many guys wanting to get up, see what Tennessee has to offer in spring practice. But then, you got the junior day coming up this weekend, and Tennessee had 2 really good junior days in January. And this is going to be another junior day. The early list looks solid. It should take a little bit more shape throughout this week. But it's a chance to get some guys up that you didn't get in January and try to establish solid footing with them going into April and then May and June official visits. So it's a big weekend for Tennessee. You'll see some 2025 guys come through campus that they like early on, continuing to scour different positions as they cast a wider net. Caleb Odom, the tight end from Carrollton, who just got a big bump in the On3 recruiting rankings, will be in this weekend. Justin Talanu is set to come in from California as it stands. We'll see if he makes it in. But another guy that just got a big ranking bump, offensive tackle. So 2 positions that Tennessee's continuing to cast a, wider net and try to expand their board at. Those 2 guys are going to be probably the headliners for me for the weekend, I would say. And then a couple of defensive linemen slated to come in that have continued to see their stock rise. Don't want to mess the name up, but I want to say Jarevius Hall. Yeah, Jarevius Hall and Marcus Downs, 2 guys that have seen their stock continue to rise since their junior seasons wrapped up. So both of those guys are slated to be in. There are 2 names to watch on the defensive line.
Matt, Brent asked you in regards to the Under Armour All-American Camp Series this past weekend, kind of where Tennessee, kind of the mood about Tennessee at that camp, if you will. 2 junior days already in the rearview mirror, 1 coming up this weekend in terms of getting prospects on campus that you want. Kind of where's Tennessee at right now in the minds of a lot of prospects? I know Tennessee's always in the conversation, but, in your conversations with these guys, 2024s, 25s, is Tennessee a school to where they say, hey, I've got to get there, or I'm going to make it a priority to get there in March, or, yeah, I'd like to get there, but we'll see how the summer goes? I mean, kind of where's Tennessee on that thought process, now after the big season last year and, of course, heading into year 3 for Josh Heupel?
Yeah, it's really more of a want to get there now. Like I've got to get there, type situation for Tennessee, and these recruits, they saw what Tennessee put on the field last year, and that stands out to them. But you're going into year 3, and Tennessee has done a good job on the recruiting trail. The staff has been relatable to kids. They like what they've seen. If they've been up before, they want to get back and experience it again. And one thing I talked in depth with Mike Matthews about this weekend was the culture at Tennessee. And that's one of the things that continues to come up over time is the culture. They feel at home. They don't feel pushed when they're on these visits. They like the guys that they're there with. They're relatable. The recruits that they're on the visit with are relatable to them. Tennessee's recruiting is similar type of recruit personality wise. And I think that goes a long way in seeing these kids want to continue to get back to campus.
Yeah, I think it's pretty fascinating to see, who all ends up coming back. And then you look at, who they evaluate, who they find this spring as well. I think this is a big week too for Tennessee in recruiting, Matt and Rob, in a kind of unusual way with the NFL Combine. But because of Tennessee, it's not one guy running. It's not one guy there this week, Rob. And it's been a while since Tennessee's had this kind of exposure for a week-long deal with the Combine. This is a big opportunity week for not only those guys to go make money, but it's a big opportunity week for Tennessee on the recruiting front to sell that stuff if those guys go out and perform well. They haven't had this opportunity in a while.
Yeah, and I think that you can, I guess to put an even finer point on it, you can sell yourselves as developers of talent, because these weren't, Darnell Wright was a 5-star recruit, but he hadn't exactly, had an all SEC career, the first couple of seasons that he was on campus. I mean, a lot of these guys had not really been productive until Coach Heupel and his staff got here. And I think that's, an even added bonus for, if they go perform well, if it, they take the next step and are drafted and play. So, I think that's a great point, Huber. I mean, I don't think that's something that you can overstate. I mean, that's where does that show up in the initial sales pitch when you're sending out literature in recruiting? How many draft picks we had, how many players, Coach Heupel put in the NFL, et cetera, et cetera. It's pretty high up there.
I mean, I'm selling it hard, aren't you, Matt? I mean, because listen, facilities are great, colors are great, winning on the field, all that's great. But at the end of the day, a lot of these guys are thinking about the next level. I know there's NIL talk, but they're still thinking about draft day. I mean, you got to, if you're Tennessee, you need these guys to capitalize, and then you have to capitalize on it from a marketing standpoint, starting this week, carrying through the NFL draft, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree. For Tennessee to have this opportunity to finally sell this on both sides of the football, Darnell Wright's continuing to get taught at offensive tackle, creeping up the board, potentially into the first round. Byron Young, continues to be a talking point for teams, maybe a day 2 pick, most likely a day 2 pick. And then, for Tennessee, I think one key thing for them that you can sell along with that, like Rob said, the developmental standpoint, you can also sell the continuity, right? You didn't have a lot of turnover this offseason, and the turnover that you had, you promoted from within, you filled that position, and you brought Alec Ablin in at tight end coach, and you're moving forward. So for me, I think you have a chance to kind of sell a combination of all that. And one of the things that I heard a couple of recruits talk about over the weekend at the Under Armour camp was that they wanted to, they had seen Todd Monken's offense at Georgia for the last few years. There's a belief and a reason to trust, Kirby Smart and Mike Bobo being the offensive coordinator there, but they want to have those plans answered. So there's, a chance for Tennessee to sell continuity and development this week that they haven't had before, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's a really good point too, because something that was not ever consistent during the 3 years Jeremy Pruitt was here was his coaching staff. There was tons of movement all off season long. For the most part, now there's been a guy leave here and there, but for the most part, that's been very consistent with Josh Heupel through 2 years, and of course the results are starting to kind of speak for themselves.
And And Matt, I wanted to ask you this because you mentioned when you threw out a couple of names coming up this weekend about Tennessee casting a bit of a wider net in some positions, offensive tackle being one of those. Of course, that's a pressing need, tight end a pressing need. Do you get the sense that because of Tennessee's success, they're in a position that they can cast a wider net? I mean, they have the opportunity. Or do you think it's a mentality change from Tennessee of, hey, we need to be recruiting more guys. We need to have a deeper board, because we're not going to go 4 for 5 and that type of thing. What do you think is leading to what appears to be a deeper pool of guys in some positions in particular, but really overall with this class so far?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of the, we're not going to go 4 or 5. I think the NIL, structure in college football last year, Tennessee was again an offensive tackle at one time in a really great spot with multiple guys, and it just didn't work out. And NIL didn't play the signing role in every one of those recruitments, obviously, but it was huge. And it's not as easy to just build those relationships and catapult that to the end and get a recruiting win. So I think for Tennessee, it's a little bit of that and continuing to trust evaluations. I think when you look at some of the guys that they've offered recently at those positions, their stock has continued to rise. They turned in really good junior seasons, and they're continuing to, get increasing interest from schools across the country. And I think we've talked about this before. The last few years, up until last year, offensive tackle just had not been a position. You need a lot of tackle bodies, and it just was not a position that was churning out quality bodies where there was, 10 to 15 guys in a class that could come in and help you in year 1 or year 2. And these last 2 classes have continued to see that. This year, Marquez Easley, a guy, for example, that probably has picked up 20 offers since November. Bennett Warren, a guy that's picked up 15 or 20 offers since November at the tight end position. The kid from Cardinal Gibbons in Florida, his name escapes me now. He's picked up 15 offers in the last 2 months. So I think it's a little bit of, we need to cast a wider net, but also, trusting that evaluation process and going through it and, trying to stick to that.
Big week for hoops, big weekend for recruiting, and big weekend for some former Tennessee players at the NFL Combine. Just a quick note on that. I think personally Jalen Hyatt is going to be the talk of the Combine because I expect him to run a low 4.3. He's going to fly, and I think Darnell Wright. I know Austin said this for months now. Darnell Wright, to be as big as he is and athletic as he is and as young as he is, only 21 years old, and as experienced as he is, to get a chance to get out there and move around, do some positional drills and interview. I think it'll be a big week for Darnell Wright as well. So looking forward to seeing how those guys, Byron Young, Cedric Tillman, Hendon Hooker's going to be there, Jeremy Banks, Paxton Brooks. I think that's it. I might have left off one or two, but Tennessee's got a big showing at the NFL Combine. We'll see how they do.
Yeah, I think that wide receiver combine day is going to be just ridiculous. I mean, you better run well. You better have a really good, because that is, when I looked at all the positions out there, to me that's the one that's stacked. I mean, there's just a ton of talent. I know the NFL is all about receivers and taking more and more receivers, but you're talking about stuffing a bracket with a bunch of talent. Now there's a lot of talent rolling to Indianapolis at the receiver position. That one's going to be entertaining to watch overall, to see whose stock really soars, kind of where they all are. Because there's going to be a lot of scrutiny on that position this week.
Yep, always is. We'll look at that, and we continue to look ahead to spring practice. Just a couple of weeks away from Tennessee and some other teams around the SEC taking the field for spring practice. And Brent's, put out some big questions on offense and defense already this week. But saw this list from Clark Brooks, SEC StatCats, with us here at On 3, and he kind of ranked some quarterbacks for the pre-spring SEC quarterback rankings. It's never too early to get into list season, and he ranked 10 quarterbacks. No A&M, Missouri, Auburn, or Vanderbilt on this list because there's some uncertainty there. But 10 quarterbacks, including some returners and some new starters and a couple of transfers in there, and he has Joe Milton ranked at number 4. in terms of the pre-spring SEC quarterback rankings. Number 1 is KJ Jefferson of Arkansas. Number 2 is Jaden Daniels of LSU. Number 3 is Devin Leary, formerly of NC State, now at Kentucky. And then Joe Milton comes in at 4, right in front of Spencer Rattler at number 5. Brent, I'll ask you first. First and foremost, what an underwhelming group of quarterbacks compared to the namesake from last year. Do you like kind of where Milton is? Do you think that's fair? I think I might have had him 5th, but overall, I think 4 is a good spot for him.
Yeah, I'm not sold on the KJ Jefferson love from Arkansas. I just I'm not. He's not getting like Will Levis love, that type of deal. But I'm just. To me, that one, I could see Jaden Daniels ahead of him. I get the Devin Leary love when you look at what he did at NC State. And, the thing about KJ Jefferson, and I think when you do lists like this, I don't know what all the criteria is, Rob and Matt, when you look at these things. To me, it's a lot about who do you have around you, okay? The top 2 receivers at Kentucky a year ago were freshmen. They're going to be better at receiver. I don't know where Arkansas gets receivers from. They couldn't get anybody open last year without Burks on the field, with him being gone. They've had some kids transfer out. I don't know what kind of weapons KJ Jefferson has to go with him, and I don't think I'm just not sold. So he would not be my number 1 quarterback in the SEC in my pre-spring list. So I would start there. Again, Joe Milton's got some weapons. Joe Milton's got continuity with the offense. Which can help, and so I'd say probably 4 is probably fine for Joe Milton, but I'm just not sold on KJ Jefferson being at the top. I don't really get that one.
Yeah, I think when I looked at that, I would have probably had Jaden Daniels at 1. But when you look at the top of that list, all those guys have played a lot of football. But the same thing for me with KJ Jefferson. Who's he throwing the ball to? They struggled last year getting him open with Kendall Briles at offensive coordinator. What's Dan Enos' system going to look like? It's a new system out there. So I just have questions about KJ Jefferson. And like you said, he's not getting Will Levis love, but he's getting some love. So I'm not sold on that one yet either. And I'm interested in Devin Leary. Obviously Rich Scangarello's time as offensive coordinator at Kentucky didn't go as planned. But, Liam Cohen's back. What does that look like? Devin Leary's played a lot of football, was really good in the ACC. But Will Levis, again, I go back to the Will Levis conversation. He's being talked about as a potential number 1 draft pick. That offense should only be better, and how does Leary slot into it? So I think 4 is fine for Joe Milton. I kind of thought Will Rogers might be rated a little lower than what I would have had him. But what do things look like in Starkville too? There's just a lot of questions on that quarterback list. And again, it's one of those lists. It's preseason. What does it mean at the end of the day? But I thought Will Rogers got slotted a little bit.
Rob, I'll mention this, and I agree with you there, Matt, on Will Rogers. Sure, a lot of people say he played in a quarterback-friendly system for so many years, and but he's putting up numbers, and I've seen him do it year after year after year. Whereas I saw Spencer Rattler do it for the last 2 games of the season. But on Devin Leary, Rob, I'll say this. I mean, sure, Will Levis has the pro makeup, the physical attributes, and all that type of stuff. He will be a top 10 pick, and he played like crap a lot of times at Kentucky. I mean, just point blank. But he will be a top 10 pick. The difference here is Devin Leary was one of the best quarterbacks in the nation in 2021. He took a step back in 2022 at NC State, injuries, missed some time and all that. But if you channel into that 2021 season for Devin Leary and you put him in Kentucky now, I'm not saying Kentucky's going to win the East or go to Atlanta. I don't believe that. But that might be the biggest addition in the SEC this year if it works out that way. Whereas when you went and got Will Levis, he wasn't really anything. I understand he did some things at Penn State, but he did not have the hype or the film work that Devin Leary has coming into Kentucky.
Well, 2 years ago, Leary threw for 35 touchdowns and with 5 interceptions. I mean,
yeah.
As you say, battled a lot of stuff last year, but 35 and 5, that's wildly productive and efficient at the same time. So, and it goes back to Brent's point. I'm not sure what all they have around him besides, Barry and Brown. But when I look at that list, these guys have a long way to go, but whoever plays quarterback at Alabama or Georgia will not be the 8th and 9th most productive quarterback in the SEC.
On that
because
though,
of what
Brent,
they have around them.
On that note, though, Brent, I mean, I find it interesting. Jalen Milroe, I'm not convinced he'll be the starting quarterback for Alabama, and if he does, I'm not convinced that he's going to last the entire year. Carson
Yeah, that's
Beck
why I said
will likely
whoever
get
plays
this.
quarterback at
Yeah.
those two schools will not be the eighth and ninth most productive players at that position.
I just think Jalen Milroe is not very good. Now, Carson Beck, he's just not experienced, but he's experienced in the system. He's been there a couple times, but a couple 5-stars right behind him. The 8-9 on this list, Carson Beck and Jalen Milroe. Kind of your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, I would have put probably the kid from Missouri at 10 over Mertz from Wisconsin, the freshman last year. I thought he was solid. I don't understand why you don't. I mean, I would have him probably in my top 10 somewhere. Milroe, I mean, I just think you're putting the Alabama quarterback on there. I think most people at Alabama think Ty Simpson's going to be the starter down there, unless they bring in a transfer post-spring from somewhere, if something stupid, crazy happens in the transfer portal. But I don't think it's going to. So I don't even think Milroe is going to be the starter going into the year. I think that'll be Ty Simpson. The other thing about this list when I look at it, and that's why I said earlier, I don't know what the criteria is. You look at this, Mertz, transfer, new system. Milroe's got a new offensive coordinator. Beck's got a new offensive coordinator. You got Spencer Sanders. Was he on the roster? They brought in so
Oklahoma
many
State.
Okay. So he's a transfer, new system. Will Rogers is going to be playing in a new system. Spencer Rattler's got a new offensive coordinator. Joe Milton's got all the continuity of anybody to this point on this list because you know what the system is. Devin Leary's productive, got a new offensive coordinator, new weapons around him to work with because he's been at another school. Jaden Daniels, continuity, because we all know what they're doing at LSU. That will build. I mean, you look at where Brian Kelly's quarterbacks are year 1 to year 2, they take a big step, much like Hendon Hooker took a step. So I think that's why you can make a case for Jaden Daniels being number one. And then KJ Jefferson's got a new system that he's going to be learning as a quarterback. So the hard thing with this list is it's not just the talent, Rob. It's the unknowns of what the offense is going to be for them and what it's going to look like and how they fit into that and how they can tailor it to those guys. Maybe one of the greatest years of unknowns at the quarterback position, not just because of the questionable talent with the quarterback, but because of their, so many of them are playing in a new system, either as a transfer or they got a new coordinator.
Yeah, and what a difference. I think somebody already pointed it out, but what a difference a year makes when, this time last year, that list included 3 guys that are absolutely locks to be, in the first round, and 2 that are, getting talked about for the number 1 overall pick. And you can't say that now. And another interesting thing, just glancing at it, it's like 5 of the top 6 guys, 4 of the top 5 guys started their careers off somewhere else than where they are now.
Yep.
Welcome to college football. I mean, it's hard to see. I mean, because it's the position's still a developmental position, and these guys are being developed at different places. They're moving into different places, moving into new systems. Sometimes, Matt, those work out really, really well. Sometimes those don't work out really, really well, right? I mean, for Hendon Hooker, it was an absolute home run. It was a great move for Russell Wilson when he made it years ago. It doesn't always work out that the guy you brought in is the best guy. So we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, I mean, you catch lightning in a bottle sometimes. I mean, look at Joe Burrow to LSU, Justin Fields to Ohio State. I mean, those guys, made the right decision for them. But it's going to be such a common theme in football now. Like you said, welcome to college football. I mean, there's going to be guys that hit and there's going to be guys that miss. It's just going to be like, the recruiting process all over again, because that's what it is. I mean, at the end of the day, I'll be interested to see. I think it's a very good point when I looked at the list of what you said with Joe Milton. He just brings back as much continuity as anybody. Jaden Daniels the same way. And I think you could very well at the end of the season, given the systems that those two programs run, I think they could be 1 and 2. Also, what does Carson Beck look like in Mike Bobo's system? Because I think Carson Beck's going to be the starter there, and one of those guys behind him is headed to the transfer portal post spring. And I think Ty Simpson is going to, should have been the one on that list. And what does he look like? Because like Rob said, he's got weapons around him, so it'll be interesting to see. I think I'd like to see what that list looks like again in May after everybody wraps up spring practice and you see film and video of what went on.
There'll be another list. Don't worry.
Yeah, there will be. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm with you too. I mean, you look at this top 10 right here, like there's no guarantee Spencer Sanders is the starting quarterback at Ole Miss, even though I think he will be. No guarantee about Carson Beck, even though I think he will be. Jalen Milroe, who I don't think will be the starting quarterback. Kind of what's that look like? And then some other guys who weren't even making this list. So I just think it's interesting. I think Joe Milton's got as high a ceiling as anybody on this. And when you compare Joe Milton to some of these other quarterbacks, he hasn't played consistently the last 2 years, of course, being behind Hendon Hooker. But when Joe has played, one thing you can say about him, he might overthrow some guys, but didn't turn the football over. I mean, Spencer Rattler is a turnover machine, right? KJ Jefferson, when he's not healthy, he turns the football over a little bit. Will Rogers thrown his fair share of interceptions, not many, but throughout his career. Joe Milton hadn't done that to this point. So just kind of interesting going into spring and kind of seeing where Tennessee's guys kind of stacked up around the rest of the SEC, where there's a lot of name loss recognition in terms of no Young, no Hooker, no Rogers, no Richardson, none of those guys. So thought it was kind of interesting. That is the pre-spring SEC quarterback rankings from SEC StatCat of On 3. And that is Clark Brooks. He's going to put a couple of these more out there, and I'm excited to kind of bring them on the podcast and talk about it. Maybe we'll get him on the podcast at a future date. Big week for Tennessee basketball. Game tonight against Arkansas. Game on the road against Auburn on Saturday to kind of see where it will finish in terms of jockeying for that top 4 overall seed for the SEC tournament, that double bye. Recruiting dead period is about to lift. Junior Day coming up this weekend. NFL Combine. Tennessee baseball, and of course, continue to talk about Tennessee football as we inch closer towards spring practice. For Brent Hubbs, Rob Lewis, Matt Ray, I am Eric Kane. Big thank you for joining us here today, and a big thanks as always to our sponsor, Exterior Home Solutions. You can give them a call today for a free estimate at 865-524-5888. A free estimate by calling Exterior Home Solutions today at 865-524-5888. Send in your mailbag questions for the Thursday podcast. Until then, enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, everybody.